All right, so you want to know how teenagers can become millionaires, right? Well, we're doing a deep dive into advice from someone who says he actually did it. Eamon Godsey.
Hmm.
Yeah, young entrepreneur, huge YouTube following, claims to have built a business worth millions, over 150 employees.
Wow.
And he's sharing his wisdom in this video called How Teenagers Can Make $1 Million. 7 money tips.
Catchy title.
Right. So can Godsey's tips actually help you become a millionaire? That's what we're here to find out.
Let's dig in.
Exactly. We're not just going to repeat his tips. We're going to unpack the mindset behind them, see what holds water, what's maybe a little out there, and what you can actually apply to your own life.
Yeah, because what's interesting is that he's talking directly to teens, which you don't see every day in the financial advice world, you know? He really pushes this idea of focusing on earning more, not just saving.
Yeah.
Like a real shift away from that whole scarcity mindset we always hear about.
He definitely seems to have a problem with that classic skip the $4 latte advice.
Right.
He even uses his first tattoo as an example. It reads, "My cup runneth over."
Oh, wow.
I know. He actually used to tell people he was a recovering alcoholic just so he wouldn't have to drink when he was first starting out.
No, really.
Yeah.
That's dedication.
Right.
Well, it's a pretty bold statement, but it shows how serious he was about his goals. I mean, he argues that alcohol is expensive and it kind of messes with your thinking, which then impacts your ability to earn.
Yeah.
But while it's true that every dollar you spend has an opportunity cost, you got to be realistic too. Completely cutting out socializing for teenagers isn't always possible or even healthy.
Girl.
And of course, there are health considerations too, you know. It's not a one-size-fits-all situation.
Okay. So maybe ditching all the drinks isn't the answer.
Oh.
But Godsey's second tip is all about learning high-income skills.
Oh, yeah.
Things like sales, copywriting, content creation.
Mm-hmm.
He even mentions mastering Google Sheets.
I mean, and he's a big believer in finding the right company, too. One that values growth rather than just taking any corporate job. He actually says some people in his company make close to $1 million a year because they bring so much value through their skills.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, it really highlights how having valuable skills can lead to serious earning potential.
It's pretty inspiring to hear those kinds of success stories. But of course, not every high-income skill is going to guarantee you a 6-figure salary.
So what are some things teenagers should think about when they're trying to figure out which skills are worth investing in?
Well, you know, one thing that's really interesting is the whole rise of technology. Think about skills like coding, data analysis, digital marketing. These are fields with huge demand, and teenagers today have a real advantage in learning them early on.
Yeah.
Of course, passion and finding something that fits your personality are key too.
Right.
You're more likely to succeed if you actually enjoy what you're doing.
It's got to be something you like, right?
Exactly.
That makes a lot of sense. It's about finding that sweet spot where your skills and interests meet the needs of the market.
Speaking of investing, Godsey's third tip is all about building that habit early. He shares a story about starting with just 5 pounds a week at 16.
5 pounds?
I know. And now he's investing 100,000 pounds a week.
Wait, went from 5 pounds to 100,000 pounds a week.
I know, right? I got to know how that happened.
Yeah, me too.
Well, it really highlights the power of consistency and building up your ability to invest over time.
Okay.
He's a big believer in compound interest, this idea that your money earns money, and then those earnings earn even more money.
Yeah.
It's like a snowball effect.
Yeah.
Starting young gives you a huge advantage.
I'm starting to wish I had started investing when I was a teenager.
Me too. But for those listening who are just starting out, where should they even begin? Is there a way to make investing less intimidating?
Absolutely. One of the most important things to understand is diversification.
Diversification.
It's just a fancy way of saying don't put all your eggs in one basket. Instead of investing all your money in one company or one type of asset, you spread it out across different things like stocks, bonds, real estate.
Okay.
This helps reduce your risk.
So you're not betting everything on one horse, so to speak? What are some other investing basics teenagers should know?
You also need to understand risk and return generally. Investments with higher potential returns also come with higher risk. It's like a seesaw. The higher you go on one side, the lower you go on the other. And no matter what you invest in, patience is key. Investing is a long-term game, not a get-rich-quick scheme.
So don't panic if the market has a bad day or even a bad year. Just stay focused on those long-term goals.
Exactly.
Okay. Now, for a tip that's a bit more out there, Godsey recommends having coffee in affluent places. Think expensive hotels or fancy cafes in wealthy areas.
Interesting.
His idea is to observe the wealthy in their natural habitat, to learn their style, demeanor, even how they order.
So, like, you can absorb their habits and mindset just by being around them.
Yeah, that's the idea.
I don't know about that. Not every wealthy person is someone you want to emulate, and their habits might not be worth copying.
It's a good point, right? You got to be selective about who you choose as role models.
Yeah.
Instead of passively observing, maybe teenagers should focus on finding mentors who are willing to actively share their knowledge and experience.
Exactly. And remember, success comes in many forms. It's not just about wealth or fancy coffee. It's about finding fulfillment, making a positive impact, and living a life that aligns with your values.
Well said. All right, now for a tip. I think we can all agree on Slay. The credit card dragon Gadsby is very clear. Credit card debt is enslavement. Pay it off as quickly as possible.
Totally agree. This is solid advice, especially for young people who are new to credit. Those high interest rates on most credit cards can be brutal if you only make minimum payments. You'll end up paying a fortune in interest charges and digging yourself deeper into debt.
Sounds like a recipe for disaster. What are some practical tips for teenagers to avoid falling into that trap?
The golden rule is to only spend what you can afford to pay back in full each month. Think of your credit card like a debit card. If the money is not in your account, don't swipe.
That's a great way to think about it.
Yeah.
What else should teenagers keep in mind?
Make sure you understand the terms and conditions of your credit card, especially the interest rate, any fees, and the grace period. Knowledge is power when it comes to managing your money.
So read the fine print, okay, onto a topic that's near and dear to my heart, self-education. Is King Gadsby believes in investing in yourself, even spending thousands of dollars, if you learn one valuable thing that can boost your earning potential.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in lifelong learning, investing in courses, books, seminars. It can all be incredibly valuable.
Absolutely.
However, with so many options out there, especially online, it's important to be discerning.
So how can teenagers evaluate those resources and avoid scams?
First, look for courses taught by people who have a proven track record and are experts in their field. Don't be afraid to Google them. Second, check out reviews from other students. It's like checking the ratings before you watch a movie.
Makes sense. What else should you look out for?
Think about how the course is delivered. Does it fit your learning style? Do you prefer video lectures or do you thrive in a more interactive environment? And always check the refund policy. Reputable providers will usually offer a money-back guarantee if you're not happy with the course.
It's important to protect your investment, especially when it comes to your education.
For sure.
All right. Gadsby's final tip is a bit of a doozy. He recommends increasing the percentage of your income that you invest as you earn more. He even suggests starting with 70% in your early 20s.
Whoa, 70%, that's a lot.
I know, right? It's definitely a bold strategy. While the idea of investing a big chunk of your income is sound, that specific percentage might not be realistic for everyone. It's important to consider factors like student loans, living expenses, and your personal goals. You don't want to be so focused on saving for the future that you forget to enjoy the present.
Right, it's all about balance. Exactly, and financial planning is an ongoing process. Your goals and priorities might change over time, so it's important to review and adjust your investment strategy accordingly.
Makes sense.
Wow, we've covered a lot of ground already. We've explored Ayman Gadzi's 7 tips for teenagers to become millionaires, and we've really started to unpack the mindset behind them.
From ditching the drinks, maybe not all of them,
Right.
to embracing self-education, strategic investing, there's a lot for young people to consider as they start their financial journey.
Stay tuned for part 2 of our deep dive, where we'll continue exploring these ideas and see how they can be applied in the real world.
You know, one thing that's been on my mind as we've been talking about Gadsby's advice is it seems to assume a certain level of privilege.
That's a really good point. His tips feel geared towards teenagers who already have some financial support or access to resources. Not everyone starts from the same place. Exactly. Telling a teenager who's struggling to make ends meet to invest 70% of their income just isn't realistic, or even responsible socioeconomic factors play a huge role in financial success. And while mindset is important, it's not the whole story.
It's a good reminder to approach financial advice with a critical eye and consider the bigger picture. Speaking of which, let's go back to Gadsby's emphasis on learning high-income skills.
Yeah.
We talked about some examples, but what actually makes a skill high income?
Well, high-income skills usually involve solving complex problems requiring specialized knowledge and are in high demand. They often require creativity, critical thinking, and strong communication skills. And as we mentioned earlier, passion and finding a skill set that aligns with your interests are crucial.
So for teenagers who are still exploring different career paths, how can they figure out which skills will be both personally rewarding and potentially lucrative?
I'd recommend exploring different fields, talking to people in various professions, and maybe even trying out internships or volunteer opportunities. Hands-on experience can be so valuable when you're trying to figure out what truly clicks with you.
And it's okay to change your mind. The career path you envision at 16 might evolve as you gain new experiences and insights. Flexibility and adaptability are valuable skills in themselves.
Absolutely. The job market is constantly changing, so being able to adapt is key. Now let's circle back to Gadsby's investment advice. Starting early is definitely a good idea, but the world of investing can feel really intimidating, especially for teenagers.
I think a lot of young people might feel overwhelmed by the complexity of it all.
I get it, the financial industry can be full of jargon and confusing concepts, but at its core, investing is actually pretty straightforward.
So what are the key principles that teenagers should grasp?
First, you need to diversify your investments. Remember, we talked about not putting all your eggs in one basket? It's the same idea here. You spread your money across different types of assets, like stocks, bonds, and real estate, to reduce your risk. It's like a safety net for your money.
That makes sense. So what else should teenagers keep in mind when it comes to investing?
You also need to understand the relationship between risk and return. Higher potential returns usually come with higher risk. It's a trade-off. And no matter what you invest in, patience is key. Remember, investing is a marathon, not a sprint. Don't get discouraged by short-term ups and downs in the market.
Just keep your eyes on the prize, those long-term financial goals. And there are so many resources available now to help young people learn about investing. Websites, apps, even educational videos can provide guidance. Don't be afraid to ask questions.
Exactly. There's a wealth of information out there now. Remember Gadsby's advice about having coffee in affluent places. I appreciate the idea of surrounding yourself with successful people, but I'm not convinced that simply observing them is all that effective.
I agree, not all wealthy people are ethical or admirable, and their habits might not be worth emulating.
Instead of passively observing, I think it's much more valuable for teenagers to actively seek out mentors or role models who embody the values and qualities they admire.
People who are willing to share their knowledge and insights, not just their lifestyle.
Right. And remember, success comes in many different forms. It's not just about money or material possessions. It's about finding something you're passionate about, making a positive contribution, and living a life that's true to yourself.
Now let's dive back into Gadsby's advice to pay off credit card debt as soon as possible. We touched on this earlier, but it's worth exploring why credit card debt is so dangerous, especially for young people.
It all comes down to those high interest rates that most credit cards carry. If you're only making the minimum payments, you'll end up paying a huge amount in interest, and it becomes really hard to get out of debt. It can have a snowball effect, just like compound interest, but in a bad way.
So it can really impact your financial future.
Absolutely. And it can affect your credit score, which can make it harder to get loans for things like a car or a house down the road. So what can teenagers do to avoid falling into this debt trap?
That's a great question. Are there any simple rules they can follow?
The best rule of thumb is to only spend what you can afford to pay back in full each month. Treat your credit card like a debit card. If you don't have the money in your account, don't swipe it.
That's a great way to keep yourself in check. What else is important to remember?
Make sure you understand all the terms and conditions of your credit card, like the interest rate fees and grace period. Don't be afraid to ask questions and get clarification from your bank or credit card company.
So it's all about being informed and taking control of your finances. Now let's go back to self-education, which Godsey is obviously a big advocate for with so many online courses and programs available. How can teenagers choose the right ones?
It's definitely overwhelming. The first thing to look for is a reputable instructor who has proven expertise in their field. Check their credentials, look them up online, and see what kind of experience they have.
It's like checking out the reviews before you see a movie.
Yeah.
You want to make sure it's worth your time and money.
Exactly. And don't forget to read reviews from other students. They can give you valuable insights into the course content, the teaching style, and the overall value.
So it's not just about the instructor. It's about the learning experience as a whole. What else should teenagers consider when evaluating online courses?
Think about the format and delivery of the course. Does it fit your learning style? Some people learn best by watching video lectures, while others prefer a more interactive environment. And always check the refund policy. Reputable course providers will offer a money-back guarantee if you're not satisfied.
That's a good point. You want to make sure you're protected if the course isn't what you expected. Now let's talk about Gadsby's final tip, which is to increase the percentage of your income that you invest as you earn more. He even suggested starting with a whopping 70% in your early 20s.
That's a bold suggestion. While it's generally a good idea to invest a significant portion of your income, The exact percentage that's right for you will depend on your individual circumstances. Things like student loans, living expenses, and personal goals will all play a role.
It's important to find a balance between saving for the future and enjoying the present. You don't want to miss out on experiences just because you're trying to reach an arbitrary savings goal.
Absolutely. Financial planning is an ongoing process, and your goals and priorities might change over time. It's important to be flexible and adjust your strategy as needed.
So we've really delved deep into Iman Gadzhi's millionaire mindset and his 7 tips for teenagers. We've explored the pros and cons, talked about the practical applications, and considered the potential downsides.
From developing valuable skills to navigating the world of credit and investing, there's a lot for young people to think about as they embark on their financial journey.
Stay tuned for part 3 of our deep dive, where we'll wrap up our analysis of Gadzhi's advice and explore some alternative perspectives on wealth creation. As we've been going through Gadzhi's advice, you know what I keep thinking about?
What's that?
Mindset. He really pushes how important it is to believe in yourself and your ability to build wealth.
Yeah, that's definitely key. Whether or not you agree with every single strategy he lays out, that core message of self-efficacy is super powerful.
Yeah.
It's about knowing you can achieve your goals even if they sound crazy at first.
But isn't there a danger of that turning into overconfidence? Like, just believing you'll be a millionaire is enough to make it happen.
Well, that's where balance is important, right? Mindset is like the fuel, but you still need the engine, the skills, the knowledge, the consistent effort.
The actual work.
Exactly. And Gadzhi does touch on this even if he leans heavily on the earning side over saving.
Right. He's all about increasing the velocity of money coming in. But that brings up another question. Is this a purely individualistic viewpoint? Does it take into account stuff outside your control?
That's such a good point, and one that often gets overlooked in these conversations about wealth. Systemic factors matter.
Like what kinds of things?
Oh,
Yeah.
Economic opportunity, access to education, even discrimination based on things like race or gender. Those all play a huge role.
Yeah.
Someone might have the best mindset in the world, but if they're constantly hitting roadblocks because of societal issues, it's going to be a way harder climb.
So personal responsibility is important, but it's not the whole picture.
Definitely. It's like trying to run a race with weights strapped to your ankles.
I like that analogy. So if we had to boil down Gadzhi's advice to its essence, what are the core principles?
I'd say it boils down to 3 things. Focus on creating value, cultivate an abundance mindset, and make smart financial decisions.
Can you break those down a bit more?
Sure. So for creating value, ask yourself, what skills or services can I offer that solve problems and are in demand?
Makes sense.
Then for abundance mindset, believe in yourself, but back it up with action and always keep learning.
Okay, and what about smart financial decisions?
Invest wisely, manage debt responsibly, and think about long-term growth rather than just instant gratification.
Those are solid principles, even if you're not trying to become a millionaire.
Exactly. It applies to anyone who wants to improve their financial situation.
Something Gadzhi said kind of rubbed me the wrong way. He talked about how people who are financially irresponsible end up subsidizing those who are good with credit cards. It felt almost like he was blaming people who are struggling.
I know what you mean. It's tricky, right? There's a difference between promoting financial literacy and shaming people who maybe didn't have access to the same resources or education.
Yeah.
Financial struggles are often the result of so many different factors, not just personal choices.
So it's a good reminder to approach these topics with empathy and understanding.
Definitely financial well-being is complicated.
Yeah.
We need to be aware of the bigger picture.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Iman Gadzhi's millionaire mindset, what's your biggest takeaway?
For me, it's that building wealth is a journey, not a destination. It's about constantly learning, adapting to change, and making sure your financial goals match your values.
And it's about realizing success isn't just about how much money you have, it's about the impact you make in the life you create.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
And for those of you listening, we hope this deep dive has given you some valuable insights, whether you're a teenager with big dreams or just looking to improve your financial knowledge. Remember, knowledge is power. Keep learning, keep asking questions, and keep striving for a future that aligns with your values and goals.